Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Calder's Calling podcast, the Calder Times flagship podcast and your premier podcasting destination for everything surrounding the American Hockey League. I am Deana Weinheimer. I'm joined today by Corey Swartz. Unfortunately, Jay is unable to be with us today, but we're going to keep on rolling with this. We're in the middle of some amazing division finals playoff action. We're going to be talking about those series currently in progress, as well as one divisional final that has already wrapped up before even one series even has their second game. So stick around for that. So on today's show, talking all about American Hockey League playoff action. But before we kick things off, if you haven't already subscribed to us on your favorite podcasting platform or YouTube, please do it now. If you're currently watching on YouTube, please feel free to like, share, and hit the little bell button so you can get every episode straight to your feed. I'd also like to thank our show sponsor, Document Doctors. When they're not on the ice, they can help you and your business optimize and increase your revenue and profits to a bigger slice. Check out documentdoctorsllc.com and don't forget to mention that the Calder Times sent you to them. So before we get started talking about our stars of the week and all of the, the division finals action up until now, we do have a little bit of news to share. Earlier on Monday, the Springfield Thunderbirds announced that the St. Louis Blues president of hockey operations and general manager Doug Armstrong had it himself announced that the team had named Steve Konowalchuk as the new head coach of the Springfield Thunderbirds. So according to Kevin Maxwell, the Thunderbirds general manager, quote, "We went through an extensive interview process, and through those conversations, it became clear that Steve best fit what we were seeking in a head coach." He continued to say, "We look forward to seeing him work with the next wave of Blues prospects and developing them into successful NHL players in St. Louis," end quote. So Konowalchuk, age 51, he actually spent last season as an associate coach with the Colorado Eagles, helping to lead them to a 40, 25, and 7 regular season record and a 5th place finish in the Western Conference. Now, he is native to Salt Lake, Utah, and his career actually did begin in Colorado, where he served 2 seasons as an assistant coach for the Avalanche. And then in 2011, he was named the head coach of the WHL Seattle Thunderbirds, and then went on to spend 6 seasons behind that version of the Thunderbirds bench. Now, during his tenure, he guided the WHL Thunderbirds to 5 postseason appearances, including 2017, where they captured the WHL championship. Following the time in Seattle, he did serve as 1 season as an assistant coach with the Anaheim Ducks before spending 2 seasons as the head coach of the WHL's Red Deer Rebels. Now, that's just his coaching career. He has spent time as a player as well. A very long NHL playing career. He was originally drafted by the Washington Capitals in 1991 before embarking on a 14-year NHL career, overall dressing in 790 regular season NHL games. 693 of those were with the Capitals. Also has represented the U.S. in several international competitions, including the 1996 World Cup of Hockey, where he captured a gold medal. So lots of accolades for Steve Konowalchuk, and looks to be a really great addition to that coaching staff over there.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting twist because we already know that Springfield's previous head coach, who was promoted to the St. Louis Blues, I believe had the interim tag taken off, and he's now just the head coach. So it's good to see the Thunderbirds kind of shoring up their positioning behind the bench and doing it pretty early on too. I mean, there's sometimes, and maybe this is just me from what the Bears have had to deal with in the past, where it was some late moves where some guys have been taken at different times. It's good to have this settled in May so that the coach can provide insight on what he's looking for. You kind of get a feel for his style. This isn't a situation where you have a group of guys that are, going to be molded around a coach. This time you have your coach and you can kind of build out from there in some ways. So I like this move. I think it's a good one. Great resume, as you mentioned there. Lots to like, I think, if you're a Thunderbirds fan going into this new season where, they're kind of looking to get things back on track.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said about having the coach there and present to be able to work on getting the players to fit their system. I mean, as each day ticks on, we're getting closer and closer to the Calder Cup being awarded, which means free agency for the American Hockey League will be here quicker before we know it. And it's so much easier to try to convince players to come join your team whenever they know who the head coach is. So that'll be really interesting to watch unfold with a head coach of this caliber and with his whole career up to this point. I mean, who wouldn't want to possibly go and play for someone like that?
The one question that I have about this that's kind of an intriguing thing is, do you think this bodes any kind of sign for the market for AHL coaches at large? Where, you always hear a lot of rumors of, this NHL team that's looking to fill their coaching void, they're looking at AHL guys. We saw Craig Berube landed as the Toronto Maple Leafs head coach just recently to recording this as well, where you're sort of like, is this a situation where, obviously in this case, you're being promoted from an associate coach to a head coach in the AHL, maybe not making that leap, but I wonder if it just has any implications on that market where we're going to see, maybe there's less NHL head coaches. Basically the musical chairs are starting to get filled, so to speak. And, in this case, you're getting in a job early. It's an upgrade, but you're also, trying to make sure you're not without a spot either by any stretch.
Yeah, that is a very good question. I mean, I don't think we really see the carousel of coaches like you would in the National Hockey League. So yeah, whenever a job comes knocking, take it.
Definitely.
But I also think it's really, it's been fascinating to watch the last like 8-9 years or so, just the evolution of coaches from the American Hockey League up to some of the top teams in the NHL. Like you had John Cooper. He was a coach, I believe, with Syracuse, now coaching the Tampa Bay Lightning. He was the one who led them to the 2 straight Stanley Cups. You have Jared Bednar, who was the coach of the Cleveland Monsters, led them to that 2016 Calder Cup. Fortunately for the Columbus organization, he got coaxed away, led the Colorado Avalanche to a Stanley Cup. So it's that mantra of the AHL being the second best league in the world. I think it's really truly starting to hit home here. And coaches are seeing that as a true stepping stone up to potential NHL starting jobs for very good teams.
It's also equally funny to see. I think there was a list put out there of like the longest tenured NHL head coaches. And I think John Cooper was, if not the longest tenured, he was pretty close. And the list included like John Tortorella and Spencer Carberry, who have been what I would consider to be fairly recent hires. Or these different guys. It feels like there's always tons of openings, and like you said, the AHL is becoming a great place to audition for NHL time, just like just like it is for players, it truly is for coaches. And I think it's an underrated market in that respect too. I mean, that's truly the path to getting there is paved through the AHL. So lots of great graduate stories, which we love to see.
So John Cooper, 2013 is when he started coaching the Tampa Bay Lightning. So if anybody's longer tenured than him, I would be shocked. All right, so we are going to go ahead and move into our stars of the week. Normally we award 3, but Jay is not here this week. So we're just going to have 2. And Corey, I'll just let you explain this.
Well, for the first time, it's a back-to-back MVP selection for me. And so I'm going again with Ivan Miroshnichenko. And it's hard. It was hard to really go with anybody else for me, truly, because he, had another great standout, performances. I say that plural because he's up to 5 goals, I believe, in the Calder Cup playoffs so far, tied for the team lead on the Bears with Ethan Frank. But he's just been lights out and on fire. And I have a great clip that I want to show for part of this. He scored 2 goals on Saturday in Game 2 for the Bears against the Hartford Wolfpack. And this is just something you have to see for yourself. I swear to you, I thought that was Alex Ovechkin flying down the wing there or through center ice. Just the confidence that he has on another level. This is the same guy who, going into the series as the MVP of, Hershey's last game against Lehigh Valley, said, "Bear, go hunt wolf." And he is leading the charge in hunting the wolf so far with this great move, cutting through center. Look at this little flick of the puck through his legs, past the defenseman.
Wow.
The patience to, deke around the goaltender, wait until Garand is down and out. Some people might have said if this hadn't been Dylan Garand in goal, that maybe it was a fluke game in Game 1 where they, Hartford just didn't have their goaltending. Not so. Miroshnichenko's been on fire. Had a great interview with him after the game where, he sheepishly said that he wanted to pass the puck, but he couldn't find a teammate to pass the puck to. And, he's still a youngster. He's still learning his English. That made the interview more endearing. I think he was a great to listen to. It's just hard to pick anybody else. Like, that whole game was dictated by 2 great goals that he had. Goals 1 and 2 that, helped lift the Bears to a 4-2 win. So I couldn't really do it justice if I went with anybody else for my start this week.
I mean, it's a very fair back-to-back awarding for you, but I see your fancy goal, and I raise you a shorthanded goal by Justin Pearson from the Cleveland Monsters, who is my star of the week. And wait till you get a better view of this, because remember, he is shorthanded. Took a nice little fan shot there, but this goal is amazing. Okay, so you see the Syracuse defender come out, tries to drop past it, and the puck just stops dead. He dekes once, dekes twice, waits for the goalie, waits for Brandon Halverson to just commit to the slide, and then boom, pops it in, gives Cleveland a 1-0 lead with 15-14 remaining in the period. And that was the only goal that was scored the entire game. Yeah, deke once, deke twice, slide, boom. Man, that was such a pretty goal. It was, just to have someone like Justin Pearson, a true depth person, score that goal was, it's jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring, whatever you want to call it. But he truly has a flair for those dramatic goals. And I actually asked him about this, and he just said, I'm so fortunate to be in the role that I am. He said that every goal is special, just knowing you're doing it for the guy next to you. And then he laughed and said, but yeah, just some special goals, and I'm just having a ton of fun. So honestly, that's what hockey's about. Go out there, have fun. And yeah, he was the hero of game number 1 for the Cleveland Monsters against the Syracuse Crunch.
He looks like how I picture myself to look when I line pucks up and I you're skating around by yourself and you slip the puck through a little bit of a gap and then you lift on the backhand. You're like, oh man, that would look so sweet if that was on a player. He looks like how I want myself to look when I do that sort of stuff when I'm just skating around. He made it look really easy. And I mean, again, it's like, it looks like traffic cones out there. The drop pass that the Crunch executed there is a dangerous one. And I think that penalty killers in the AHL especially have been really sharp at pouncing on those and creating opportunities. The slingshot method on the power play has been, a pretty standard thing here for a long time. And, teams know how to counter, but there's nothing quite as good at countering it as just getting in there, taking the puck and making them pay for, skating a little bit lazy and, a little bit of a soft pass there too.
Yeah. And honestly, that's not like Max Crozier, the defenseman for Syracuse, that did that drop pass. He was trying to connect with Cole Koepke, but that ice was so choppy and honestly pretty bad because at that point, the Cleveland Cavaliers were still in play. So just the changing from ice to basketball back to the ice, it really did a number on that. But one more note before we move on, that actually was Justin Pearson's first professional special teams goal um, in game winner. Like I said, slight flair for the dramatic. So we're going to go ahead and pivot to talking about the Eastern Conference Division Finals. First, we're just going to go right on over. We're going to go east to west. We're going to take a look at the Atlantic Division between the Hershey Bears and Hartford Wolfpack, where Hershey right now with a commanding 2-0 lead. I'll let Corey take it off here.
Yeah, so the Bears jumped out to a 2-0 lead with two, what I would call pretty convincing wins on home ice. Giants Hunter's been kind to the Bears here so far. They've won, I believe, all 4 games that they've played there in the postseason so far. You can look at the first game as, saying, sure, Hartford was down Dylan Garand, who got recalled the 11th hour. It was announced as the teams were taking the ice for warm-ups, which is extremely rare that, Dylan Garand was not going to be there. Although I do have to say I think that Olaf Lindbaum is pretty good. I've liked what I've seen from him. He played a couple of games for the Wolfpack. Obviously, he only has, I think, a total of 6 regular season games under his belt, and obviously that would make game 1 his first professional start. It was no disrespect to him. I mean, he held the Bears to 1 goal through 65 minutes at one point in the regular season. So, liked what I saw from him, but the Bears are really, I think that Lehigh Valley series really helped to bring out the best in them and, quote unquote, as they say, poke the bear, as has been mentioned a few times here with the Bears over the last year or so. But, it really forced the Bears, they were concerned going from game 1 to 2 about how they'd respond, just like the Lehigh Valley series where they, came out with a very flat, uninspired effort in game 3. And they're still kind of looking at that in this one. But, go from a 6-1 win into a second game, it's never easy. And, Hartford does not stop playing. They, despite some of the way the game went against them in the first 2 games, they really played their hearts out, I think. And, I'll be curious to see how they perform on Wednesday on home ice. But, the Bears, I think, really executed. They're getting contributions up and down their lineup. Their power play potted 3 goals in 2 games, which is huge considering they only had 2 in the entirety of the first round series. Even their penalty kill got a shorthanded goal in game 1. There's just lots to like there. All the lines have been contributing. The 4th line chipped in for a goal. Obviously, Miroshnichenko's line has been the best line since they put Garrett Rowe back in the lineup to center Mike Vecchione and as well as Miro. Second line's been getting some goals. Joe Snively's been unbelievable. Don't call his name a ton. He hasn't scored any goals yet, but he has 6 assists in 6 games. It always feels like, if you don't hear his name tagged along with an assist on some goal in a given game, something's not right there. He's always factoring in kind of a bit of a difference maker for the Bears there too, just like he was in the regular season. And, the top line, what else can you say about Ethan Frank and Hendrix Lapierre? Lapierre is Hershey's leading point scorer, one of the league's top scorers in the playoffs, with 8 points in 6 games played. He's been fantastic. Music to the ears of Washington Capitals brass out there who are watching these young kids to potentially make their break in the NHL as soon as next season too. So lots to like for the Bears. The only thing that I have going into game 3 that I really want to focus in on for the Wolfpack is that the Bears were leading game 2 4-0. It looks pretty convincing, but the Wolfpack found what I think might be like a blueprint of sorts that I think the Bears are keenly aware of, but will be interesting to watch. They scored 2 goals in the last 3 minutes or so of regulation to suddenly kind of almost make this a game type of thing. But their formula was simple. They won net front battles and took away Hunter Shepard's eyes and got 6 on pucks. And, I don't care if you're the best goaltender in the world, those are tough chances to stop. And, the Wolfpack were able to dent Shepherd twice for that one, which, you kind of think, maybe the momentum's there going into a game 3 at home for them. It'll just be interesting to see how the tides change. Now, that happened the same way last year at this time when the Bears played the Wolfpack. The Bears went in with a 2-0 series lead. Hartford kind of had the better of the two games. Deana, I think we were on a live watch along last year when that game happened. And my kind of key to watch out for that is perhaps a repeat, because one player who scored a goal, his first Calder Cup playoff goal in that game, was Vincent Iorio in that very clinching game. And he appears to be a possibility to make his playoff debut for the Bears this season after getting injured in the NHL edition of this rivalry with the New York Rangers. So that's one of those things where I'm like, do I believe in coincidences? No, but I like to believe in fun storylines. So that's kind of my storyline to watch for the Wolfpack, and it'll be important to see how the Bears counter that in Game 3.
So on Saturday, I actually had a chance to watch the whole game because due to a little, I guess, coinky-dink in the scheduling. For the North Division, or not the North Division, but the Eastern Conference, the AHL has scheduled the games for the North and the Atlantic on the exact same days. Now, luckily, in the Atlantic, their game was at 7, and then the North was at 1 o'clock. But unfortunately, it took forever for me to get home that night, dealing with a pothole and pop tire on the highway in Cleveland. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. But while I was sitting in the car going home on that 3.5 to 4 hour drive, because obviously you can't drive on the highway with a donut, I got the chance to really sit there and watch the game. And one thing I really noticed about the Hershey Bears is that they did all the little things correctly. And that's something that, especially in a big game, in the playoffs, that maybe some teams try a little bit too hard and don't execute the little things. But that's what makes that team stand above everybody else, is they don't forget the little things. They're strong, they skate, they work, but they're connected. They just did everything so well.
That's what I love about that Lehigh Valley series for them, was that there were some games like, the first game in that series was a good win. The second game as well, they were opportunistic. They didn't have a ton of shots. They didn't have, it was a win, but it was one of those ones where you maybe didn't feel as confident going in. And then you could kind of tell that led to what happened in Game 3, as it were, a little bit. But, I give all the credit to this group as well as Todd Nelson, his coaching staff. They were not happy. They don't stand for anything other than, what they know this group is capable of. And, that resolve showed in, as the fourth game in that series went along, and has really carried over into this series. You could tell that battle really toughened them up to get their legs moving, get their hardworking pass. Like I watched a few times Pierre Dubé, who did not, register a point on Saturday. He was flying. Like, he skates very fast. He was flying in, almost jumping headfirst into the boards almost to, win the puck on a battle on the forecheck. And I've said to myself, man, this guy needs to, get rewarded with a point. He's been fantastic. And, he's been very good. And there's a lot of guys that haven't chipped in that I think, really could, the Mike Vecchionis of the world, the, Alex Limoges, Dubé is another one. There's some guys that have been really prolific scorers for the Bears that haven't found it as much in the series as guys like Miro and Frank and LaPierre. So when you look at the sum of these parts and say, hey, they didn't even have Riley Sutter for this entire series too, with how great he's been, it's almost scary to think that, to take a page out of, Dragon Ball Z or something like that. This isn't even their final form yet, type of thing. So I love to see it. I can only hope that it continues and they, roar on the road, as the saying goes.
I just miss who was it? Mike Scarbosa that did constantly the roar pictures.
Oh, that's Vecchionis.
Oh, that was Vecchioni. Okay, I couldn't remember. I couldn't remember.
He's the man behind that And that's why we need to see him pot some more goals, because we'll see more roars going by on the benches. So, which we love to see.
I knew it was one of them.
And
So
Deana, I have to give a little shout out here as well. I found maybe what might be my new favorite chant, the more that I was thinking about. But at one point when the Bears were up 4-0 in that game, there was this very vocal crowd in the upper level on the side the Bears were shooting at twice. They got this great chant going where they go, "Don't poke the bear." Don't, or I think it was "You poked the bear." I'm sorry, I said "You poked the bear." So
oh,
I love
that's
that. I
good.
was like that needs to. So if anybody's listening that was doing that on Saturday, bring it back when they come back here, because I want to hear it again. That was awesome.
That's so good. So good. So what is your prediction for the rest of this series? I mean, it's a pretty decisive lead.
I know I said 4 games last week, but I just have a hard time betting against the Bears the way they played these last couple games. The bit with Hartford, kind of coming back at the end of that game and getting some goals to feel good about, I think will make it a closer game. It'll probably be a 1-goal game, but the Bears have thrived in 1-goal games this season. So I feel a little bit more confident, sliding my chips in on the Bears taking care of business on Wednesday. If it does, I picture it being kind of like a Lehigh Valley kind of scenario where, it may be one game, but I think that may be it. If the Bears, the Bears they're playing like they want to go all the way again, and it's just so hard for me to bet against them when I see that way. Like, I'm usually in ball of nerves and a wreck when my team's in the playoffs, and they've inspired this from me all season where, you almost say to yourself, why should I be worried? These guys are so good. I will always worry. Don't catch me wrong. I'm never not worrying, but like, I just love what I've seen from them so far. I haven't felt any reason to think that Wednesday will be much different. So I think that I'm confident in saying I think the Bears will get the job done on Wednesday. That's my bold prediction.
I do have to agree with you. I mean, Hartford is such a good team, but the Bears are just a different force. And with the roster influx, especially in the goaltending position, if they don't have Garand, there's not a chance. Not a chance.
I will say the one thing that, was kind of an X factor is the NHL situation with the Rangers. If the Rangers had maybe gone to Game 7 and lost, I would say I would have rated Hartford a little bit higher, because in some of the games earlier this season when the Wolfpack did have Matt Rempe, he was, very much a difference maker in terms of being a size factor in there for the, love him or hate him, he is one of those guys that is just physically imposing, and kind of puts that little bit of extra doubt in an opponent type of thing, just with how hard he hits, how big he is, how much he patrols the ice type of thing. That was kind of my X factor in that situation. There's a chance, our very own Keegan Jarvis, kind of had the inside line on this, that there's a chance that the Wolfpack may not have Dylan Garand for Wednesday's game, with the Rangers getting underway on Wednesday the same day. So, that's another thing that, I'd be concerned about if I were the Wolfpack and their fans. Like I said, I like Lindblom. I think that he's going to be, if he's not a regular part of their rotation next season, I will be shocked. And they have those other 2 6'8" goaltenders just kind of chilling in reserve back there. They're going to have great goaltending for a long time to come, I think, with these guys. So, I hope it's only the start of good things for the Wolfpack as an organization. But, like I said, I just have a hard time picturing anything other than, hopefully the Bears kind of coming out on top of this.
So another storyline to watch for Hartford, and this was also announced early on Monday, that they have signed forward Dylan, and I apologize if I completely butcher his name, Dylan Rubarek, to an amateur tryout contract. He's 19 years old. He will be joining the Wolfpack immediately per the team's press release, wearing number 10. Subsequently, he signed a 3-year entry-level contract with the Rangers. He played with the OHL's Oshawa Generals this past season, 68 games, recording 72 points. Second on the team in points, third in assists, and then he tacked on an additional 26 points, 11 of those being goals in 21 games for the OHL playoffs. So he's a 6th round, 178th overall pick of the 2023 NHL entry draft. So we'll see if he slots in or what the storyline is there. I mean, at this point, might as well try the kid. He has success in the OHL. Maybe see what happens here in the A.
It's kind of fascinating because, I mean, usually it's pretty rare to see somebody kind of thrown into game action like that so fast. But, I think there's some strong credence to it, just given that they gave him, a lower number on the roster, very much like will probably wear this number next season type of thing. But it's pretty interesting given that he's, very young. It'd be his first AHL experience. I don't know how they're shaped, if they have, any injuries or any places they can plug him in. I feel like that's kind of rare, though, to see somebody get thrown into the fire, so to speak, that soon. Usually they like to have prospects up here just to, get a look at, quote unquote, get a look at them, so to speak. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. But, it almost seems like yes, but I'd almost like to say no, just because, let this group battle it out. It's the prospects should be there just to get a look in for the organization, and in my opinion, at least. But if they think he's ready and they want to throw it to him, go ahead, by all means.
Definitely just something to watch out for. So game 3 will be on Wednesday, the 22nd, so the day that this releases, at 7:00 p.m. If Hartford is able to get a win there, game 4 will be on Friday, May 24th, also at Hartford, also at 7:00. And then, if needed, a penultimate game number 5 will be back in Hershey on Sunday, May 26th at 5:00 p.m. All times are Eastern. So we're going to head west a little bit to the Cleveland Monsters in the Syracuse Crunch, who are in their own 5-game series for the North Division title. Also a 2-0 series lead, this time for the Cleveland Monsters, my beat. So, Corey, I do have one quick question for you. If you had to estimate the longest goal review, how long do you think that probably was?
Oh, gosh. I feel like I've seen some long ones. I don't know that I've ever stopped to count the time. I mean, usually it's no more than, 4 or 5 minutes on a bad time. But, like, there's sometimes where they can get really stuck in the mud, and you're sort of like, this must be something pretty good if it's taking this amount of time. But usually no more than, I'd probably say, like 5 to 10 minutes or so, maybe.
All right. Well, in Cleveland, for game 2, here's a number for you. There was a review around 8:30 remaining in the first period that lasted a grand total, and I timed this, and I double-checked the time because I couldn't believe it myself, 7 minutes and 56 seconds. Now, the first minute 18 of that were just the officials talking and deciding what the actual call on the ice was going to be. And I'm going to show you this clip here. Hopefully you can hear the audio because this is great. I'll let Tony Brown kind of take it away here.
Out high, Bjork, his shot blocked away in the slot. To Sweezy, who turned and fired. This one stopped, though, by Halverson on the left post.
So there's Brendan Halverson looking for it.
32 left in the first. It is 1-0 Syracuse. Monsters right now say they've scored a goal. Hold on, keep it here. Sweezy pounded it towards the net. The Monsters are celebrating. The Monsters have tied the game at 1.
So I'll continue to just kind of let this play, so we can just kind of watch this a little bit. But this was just unlike anything I've ever seen. So you can see Brandon Halverson, he makes the save, we think, and then the play kind of ends. They blow the whistle. It's time for the media timeout. So you can hear the in-arena announcer say, "Official timeout." Cleveland Monsters fans, what official? Something they always scream. It cracks me up. Anyway, so after that is called and they're, players are getting ready to go for their timeout, Trey Fix-Wolanski comes around and starts pointing at the goal going, it's in, it's in. If you look at the footage from the Columbus Blue Jackets on their YouTube page on Behind the Battle, they have a nice shot of Billy Sweezy, who ends up getting credited for this goal. He's back there, just same thing, going, it's in. He's like right there. He's screaming at the officials, it's in. And then the Monsters start celebrating. I mean, at that point, I'm writing up a tweet, to just update, everybody on the score. And then next thing I know, the lights go off. There's a horn sounding. And it's just, what is going on? But ultimately, that ended up being the goal that got the Monsters on the board, and they never looked back from there. At that point, it's a tie game, and they held Syracuse off for that entire game. But I'm just kind of looking at the series so far. You already saw the one goal that happened in game one, kind of not necessarily a sleepy game, even though it felt that way at times. It's just whenever you get a huge goalie duel, a defensive duel, there's not much that really happens there. Syracuse got 28 shots on goal in that game. Cleveland 24. And here's a numbers thing for you. In the first period was the only time that either team had double-digit shots on goal for that night. Syracuse had 12. Cleveland had 10. At that point, no team had more than 8 in a single period. So that was pretty rough, which makes, Justin Pearson's goal that much more spectacular, considering Cleveland only had 6 shots in the third period. But in that game, Brandon Halverson truly showed that he was possibly the Cinderella story of the American Hockey League in this postseason. I mean, at one point, I talked about it in the series preview that in November, if I can get my dates right, in mid-November, December, he was a backup in the ECHL. Now he's the backstop to a team in the division finals in the American Hockey League. So just on the strong Syracuse team, I wasn't really expecting him to be a standout, but so far in this series, he is the standout. But it's Owen Sillinger's doing postseason Owen Sillinger things. He's been one of the most versatile players on this team since he joined back in 2021-22 season. He's been on breakaways. He's leading physical play. He's scored game-winning goals this postseason. Owen Sillinger is one of the top players on this team right now. But the biggest thing to really look for in that first game was the differences in shots, where they were, and what teams are trying to focus on here. And I'll share a graphic as well, because I'm really getting into these shot map graphics. And so this is for game one. So as you can see, Cleveland really went down low on Brandon Halverson. There were a few kind of scattered out, but down low is where they have been most effective with tip-ins. And of course, you saw that streaking play from Justin Pearson. Whereas with, and of course, I love when you get these ones way far out. So you can see this one Syracuse shot from all the way in the other side of the neutral zone. Then you see this one Cleveland shot in blue that's in a mix of all these orange Syracuse shots. I love when you get those little anomalies. But Cleveland figured out Brandon Halverson quite early. If we get down low, we'll get it. You can see with Syracuse shot charts, they were trying different things to maybe beat Jet Greaves, but Jet Greaves is an all-star netminder, and he's one of the best ones in this entire season in the postseason. So that's kind of game one in a nutshell. Game two, completely different vibes. Of course, we already saw that almost, I don't want to say crazy, but it was very unique stretch of close to 8 minutes there in the first period. But a lot of firsts in that game. I'll start with Syracuse first for game two. So Devontae Stevens, has scored the only goal for the Syracuse Crunch this series. He scored on the power play at 8:07 of the first period, his first career postseason goal, and also kind of like Justin Pearson, it was also his first power play goal. But in that game, he was one of the better players, honestly, that entire game, playing all 200 feet. He did finish the game with a -1 rating, but honestly, it's more of a reflective of Cleveland's complete outburst than Devontae Stevens' play. He just had some fantastic time on the penalty kill. He was actually on 2 different PK units during that single penalty kill. During that time, he helped limit Cleveland to only 2 shots on the man advantage, which for this Cleveland team is kind of difficult. But also got to give some hat tips to Jakub Zaboral. He is a defenseman that came over in the trade deadline for the National Hockey League. He was the return on the Andrew Peeke trade between Cleveland and Boston, and just a real key pickup for the Monsters. And he's kind of normally your stay-at-home defenseman, real physical presence, but he actually tallied his first career postseason goal, also his first as a Monster. And I got to talk to him after game 2, and he was just really complimentary of the locker room. And he shared that he was, in his words, kind of scared and nervous coming into a new room because it was his first trade. But he also kind of shared that Boston and Providence's system is very similar to what they're doing in Cleveland. So it was a real easy transition for him. But just if you go back and look at that, so go to thecaldertimes.com, look at my game recap, and scroll down and look at the clip of this goal for Jakub Zaboral. When I say he unloaded every bit of nervous energy or anger or anything he's ever had into this shot, it's still not giving it enough credit. Okay, so the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse is huge. Again, the NBA plays there. There were, I think, over 10,570 fans, I think was the number. It's loud in there. And this shot echoed in that arena. That's how loud that shot was. It was beyond fantastic. And yeah, I can't say enough about what this Cleveland team is doing. They lost 1 game to start the North Division semifinals against Belleville, and they haven't looked back. They have not lost a game since then. And yeah, it's really starting to look a little dire for the Syracuse Crunch. Again, they're on the brink of elimination. They have to sweep the next 3 games. Luckily, 2 of those are at home. But they really need their big players to show up. Declan Carlisle has kind of been a good leader. I mean, he's been the single glimpse about what this team can do, especially in the neutral zone with preventing breakaways, knocking down pucks, skating real fast, things like that. But Alex Barré-Boulet has had issues getting to the net because Cleveland is stifling them. Gage Gonsalves, practically non-existent. I've seen him on the ice, but also it's because I'm having to really look. And I'm like, okay, I haven't seen Gage Gonsalves for a bit. Where is he? Just the most potent players on that Syracuse team are just being held off the score sheet, obviously, because they've only scored 1 goal in 2 games. But they're really going to need their home crowd to get behind them. It's just been a real rough series for them, which I thought it was going to be a little bit more equal, seeing how far that Rochester Syracuse series went in the semifinals.
Yeah, it's an interesting kind of juxtaposition for both, the North and the Atlantic divisions, and we kind of saw it also with the Pacific Division, where it's like that shift from being on away ice to home ice. Even with your back against the wall, it's so much better to be back in friendly territory. you just wonder with any series how that's going to play into it. One thing you were saying, Deana, when you were talking there, you're talking about the shot locations there. The one thing I did kind of notice there at that point was that Syracuse had this nice little U of shots where there were no shots from anywhere. There were shots from the wings, but there was no shots except for a couple in the high crease, which is where you really want to get your shots. There were no shots from the center point basically out to the center point. None of those quality shots. And that's kind of where you want to, get your screens in, get your traffic, get your point blank opportunities. When you're not able to generate too much from those areas, you can still score, but it's going to be very difficult, especially with the way, like you said, that Cleveland's minimizing some of Syracuse's top players, as well as, some of the, the top players for, that have been making differences. It's almost like, being suffocated in a sense where, I always like to think of it. We had one of these when I was younger, was this old school, like candle snuffer where it's one of those little like domed things you would put over top of a candle and snuff it out. It feels like that's how it is with this kind of series where Cleveland's really clamping down in the middle and, Jet Greaves is so good. He can handle anything that's thrown at him from the wings. When it's not quality, when there's no rebounds, when there's no, screens or anything like that, it makes a goaltender's job so much easier to, be able to handle that sort of thing. And that's what I think is the big difference maker for Cleveland. And, we could talk about flashy offense like that goal that we talked about earlier all you want, but it's really the savvy defense that wins you championships in addition to goaltending where, it's really one of the big factors there that, your goaltender can be great, but he can't, like, as we've seen with Dylan Garand, if your defense isn't up to snuff, your goaltender won't be able to steal you a Calder Cup. It comes from it starts there, but it's really, truly a beautiful sight to see 20 people kind of come together as a collective to win those games. That's what's so special about playoff hockey.
So one more thing I wanted to bring up about Game 2, and I actually asked Monsters head coach Trent Vogelhuber about this after the game on Saturday, was that Cleveland held Syracuse to only 18 shots on net the entire game. So in the first period, both teams only had 5 shots, yet Cleveland scored 2 goals with those 5 shots. Not a good save percentage for Brandon Halverson there. But in the next 2 periods, Cleveland went 13 and 10 in terms of shot counts. Syracuse had 6 shots in the second period, 7 shots in the third period. So single-digit shots the entire game. So I asked him about that, just how did that happen? How did your team manage to hold them back? And he just kind of like how we saw with Hershey, it's just killing plays early, playing heavy, skating, having your second or third man there if you need them, and just really managing the puck. That way they can stay in their offensive zone, and they're not having to worry about shifting back and playing on defensive side of the ice. But Cleveland just blocking shots, really bearing down in those areas, and ultimately got a very decisive win and have Syracuse on the brink of elimination. But this team, they're really cycling here. So I guess looking forward, again, same days as that Hershey Hartford series, but Game 3 will be in Syracuse on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Then Friday, May 24th, also in Syracuse, 7 p.m. And then if needed, if Syracuse are able to sweep their home games, then the series will move back to Cleveland on Sunday, May 26th at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So we'll see what happens there. At this rate, I think I'm going to have to kind of agree with how Corey did on his beat series with Hershey. And I don't know if Syracuse is going to be able to pull it out. This is a really feisty team, so they may get one, but I don't see them extending it past Game 4 at all if it gets there.
Listen, this episode is going to drop on the day that we all come to the realization that we're going to have a a Cleveland Hershey Eastern Conference final, and it's going to be maximum chaos on the podcast.
Yes.
So.
I cannot wait. It's but I don't want to jinx it.
That's my bold prediction, but predictions are made to be wrong sometimes. But I feel pretty confident. It's a 2-0 lead in the series is not a 3-0 lead like in, Stanley Cup playoff situation or, best of 7 situation, but it's pretty darn close. It's so hard to come back from those ones. And just the way that both these two teams, Hershey and Cleveland, have gone up in the series, it's just hard to picture anything going drastically wrong that they'd both have to come back home with a deadlock series and one game to decide it all. It just doesn't feel that way. Again, hockey is a fun game because it's always a surprise. This isn't, other sports where sometimes the writing is on the wall and there's nothing that can be changed about it. So that's the fun part about hockey, especially playoff hockey, especially AHL hockey more than anything else.
I guess one quick roster note for the Monsters. It's being reported. I have not been able to verify this, but I saw we're kind of going around that Jake Christensen allegedly, again, I'm putting so many asterisks and disclaimers on this, allegedly had to have some type of surgery on his finger. Like you can see it in some of the behind the scenes footage. He's got the finger wrapped up pretty well, and he may be done for the season. Again, not confirmed, but that is what I am hearing from a few different sources there. So we'll keep an eye on that. Still waiting to see if maybe Brendan Gaunce, he had the earlier timeline between him and Carson Meyer. So maybe one of them can come back for that Hershey series, knocking on wood that it gets there. I want it just for the pure chaos that this podcast is going to be and our coverage and all that. We'll have to do some live watch-alongs if it gets there, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I know you'll be at the home games, but I can't get up to every home game for Cleveland. So if there's one on a weeknight, we'll have to schedule it. So
I'm here for it. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. I haven't had the opportunity to enjoy a team in the postseason since I started covering the American Hockey League for my own beat. So I'm going to just revel in this for a while until I'm not, nope. I'm not putting this into the universe. No, I'm just going to enjoy it.
I said the same thing on, when I was sitting in the arena on Saturday. I was sort of like, man, especially over the pandemic. And, I hate to bring the P word into this one because it's, it feels like it's kind of a long time ago now. But there's so many times both when we were suffering initially and, even in the brief season that followed where you kind of said to yourself, you're like, man, I would do many things to have playoff hockey back. And then, at least from my perspective, and I know you can, agree with this one as well. The season afterwards, the Bears had a 3-game run and that was it. And, as fun as that one game was, you're sort of like, I just want to, and, it's been dating back to 2016 that I've been saying this too, where I was like, man, I would just do so many things to have hockey in June and to be at a hockey rink in June. And here we are, late May, you enjoyed it on Saturday. I enjoyed it on Saturday. It's just so great to be in the arena for playoff hockey. There's nothing like it. One of those things you just have to take a step back and be like, appreciate the fact that we get to be here talking about this. Because for a while there, it felt like we might not ever have it again. And that's one of the things that just, kind of tickles me the right way experiencing this now.
And I really want you to come over to Cleveland and experience playoff hockey there because I'm sure it's just pure energy and loud and everything at the Giant Center, but in Cleveland, it's a whole nother monster. Did you see what I did there? But
I see what you did there, but I don't know if your Monsters can roar as loud as they do over in Hershey. That building gets pretty darn loud, and I have some memories that will stay with me forever from last year's run. Some of the overtime goals and stuff like that. I don't think I've ever been in a building as loud as that one was for those games. As I said to people, I always say, I'm like, listen, I always say, you will not get me in those kind of situations. I will never not be jumping up and down and going crazy for those types of things. So I'm here for it as many times as I can get my grubby paws on it.
Okay, so how about this? Eastern Conference Finals. If Cleveland and Hershey make it, we find a way to get decibel readings of Giant Center versus Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, and we'll see who is actually louder.
Well, I was about to say, we'll see. I was going to say, I'm a little bit annoyed because you guys have that, basically like 9,000 people advantage type of thing. So they better bring it, honestly, because Bears fans are going to bring it just as loud. They had close to almost 11,000 on Saturday, which was pretty nuts.
So it was about the same amount of people then, because on Saturday, Cleveland had 10,570. I'm going to pull up the game report from Hershey.
No, Hershey's was 10-7 something.
Hershey had more.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in standing room.
Okay, Cleveland, I know you're loud. I need you to show up so that way I can win this friendly little wager. I just want to see how many people can fit in the field house.
I'll say they fill it up. I mean, it is 19,000 something, isn't it? It's at least a capacity building for that.
Something like that. I'm trying to see. And of course, Google is failing me right now.
Every single time.
In its basketball configuration, it says it seats 19,432. Okay, for hockey, it says that, so basically whenever in the middle of the season, the upper bowls are kind of sectioned off, everyone sits down low. In that configuration, it's 9,447. If they open up Loudville, the club levels, all that, 18,926. Northeast Ohio, are you ready for this? I need to win this little friendly wager between Corey and me, just for bragging rights, because he covers the Bears. He's got enough.
I will never say I have enough. Honestly, I had to wait 13 years between Calder Cups. That is still less than what you have had to wait through, honestly, since 2016. I still see the goal of the little highlight package they throw there. So I bided my time for this one.
But how many does that organization have? They're going for 13. Cleveland, at least the Monsters. What?
I was about to say Cleveland. The Cleveland Barons still were a thing.
We're not counting the Barons and all that because that is a completely different iteration. The city has a lot, but I wasn't alive then.
Believe it or not, the Barons as a franchise, I think that used to be the number of, like, when I was growing up and when the Bears started. That was the number that the Bears were trying to beat for a long time. It was like, okay, we want to get. I think it was by either 2006 or 2009, like one of those, we're like, okay, the Bears have more Calder Cups than the Barons franchise did. And I think it was only, when I was growing up, it was only one or two of a difference there type of thing. So that was always, Cleveland's got basically about as rich of a hockey history as Hershey does in a lot of ways, just with these different franchises kind of coming in and out. So two very rich hockey towns, that's for sure.
Oh, yeah, they had, so the Cleveland Barons, who were around just, for the heck of it, from 1937 to 1973, they had 8 regular season titles, 10 division titles, and 9 Calder Cups. So we'll see if the Lake Erie / Cleveland Monsters can continue to add on to that legacy. But Corey, anything else before we get rolling here?
Although we called last week's episode Maximum Chaos, I feel like we may end up having to call this one Minimum Chaos just because of, teams like Coachella Valley kind of taking a sweep, and these two series at 2-0. We won't know, of course, we're recording this episode, we don't know what the second game of the Grand Rapids series is like, but if that one's 2-0 as well, I feel like this may have been minimum chaos, because there's been some series. I mean, I guess technically Grand Rapids is an upset. I don't remember how those two teams stacked up in the regular season, but
Pretty close.
it may be minimum chaos this time around. And I'm, as much as we're here for maximum chaos, I'm also here for it.
I'll just say this about the Grand Rapids team. If you want to hear more about the Grand Rapids and Ontario / Coachella Valley, of course, Grand Rapids / Milwaukee Admirals. But one thing about Grand Rapids is you have to remember that whenever it was about Christmas or so, they were the 4th worst team in the league. They were 4 games below 500. Now they're up 1-0 over the Milwaukee Admirals in the Central Division Finals. Just what a meteoric rise for that team. And but stay tuned for the AHL pre-show, which drops on Friday. They'll have you covered for those Western Conference teams. But for now, that's going to be it for this week's edition of Calder's Calling. If you'd like to check out all of our written coverage of the AHL, we've had a ton of it here throughout this postseason and more on the way. Check us out online at thecaldertimes.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at The Calder Times. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcatcher. Leave a like, a comment. Don't forget to tell your friends where they can find all the AHL hockey chatter their hearts desire. If you're still listening, comment your predictions below. Do Cleveland and Hershey face off? Who's going to eventually come out of the Central Division? Who are your favorite players so far this postseason? Let us know. And of course, we'd like to extend a final thank you to our sponsor, Document Doctors. Until next week, I've been Deana, that has been Corey, and we have been Calder's Calling.